the lane, 15, 10, touchdown Chargers!
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. It's June 1st. Figured we get into OTAs today. Hear from Rashawn Slater, Kellen Moore, Keenan Allen. Get reaction to that. But, you know, Money, we've talked about this day for a while now. You wonder what the Chargers have up their sleeve in this fourth and fifth wave of free agency. I guess we'll find out soon.
It's surprising, Chris, because there are still so many good players left out there. And I know a lot of people are looking at DeAndre Hopkins. He even mentioned Justin Herbert by name on a podcast.
Yeah.
That's not a reality. He's just as good of a receiver as he is. The man's entire body is made of stickum. He doesn't drop anything. It's just not the right fit with Mike and Keenan and a first-round pick and Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer. So that's not – just kind of push that to the side. It's just surprising to me how many, and these are premium positions, wide receiver, corner, Marcus Peters is out there, O-line, Dalton Reisner's out there, D-line. I mean, look at the edge rushers that are still available. We've said these names every single week on the podcast with Jadeveon Clowney, Justin Houston, Frank Clark, Yannick Ngakoue. The list is long. We've talked about Leonard Floyd and his relationship with Brandon Staley in both Chicago and Los Angeles and how that's a good match to try to find some depth on this defensive line. The one little interesting thing that's changed today is that Damon Lloyd was just waived, and there's really no reason, right, to waive a player unless you're trying to open up a spot, unless you just know, or maybe you're being a nice, you know, the front office is being nice to Damon and say, hey, let's get you out as early as you can so you can find another place to connect, and we know the Chargers try to do that as best as possible, but that's just an interesting little thing. They now have 2 roster spots open, and I'd love to see, you know, we talked about this last week, some creativity, get out there, get some depth specifically on that defensive line is what I would love to see if they can find a way to match up one of these edge players with a number that works for them.
The names you just threw out there, June 1st, we're still talking about Ngakoue and Lloyd and Frank Clark and Clowney. I mean, one of those 4 guys, I think, would be a fantastic addition to this roster. Obviously, I'm not in the meetings with Tom and JoJo and that staff and what Staley envisions as being the best fit. Obviously, Leonard Floyd is the guy that he coached before. But if you could get one of those guys on a 1-year prove-it deal and come back and make more money in 2024, that's a win-win all around. And it just gives you a little bit more depth behind Bosa and Mack.
And it leads me to believe that it's not going to be an expensive deal. They would have been signed. There was a team that was desperate, and almost every team is desperate for edge help, for pass rushing help.
That's what's surprising.
Even though the sack numbers aren't there, Jadeveon Clowney is still one of the best edge run defenders out there, and he still provides pressures. Maybe not the sack number totals that you thought you would see, but the pressures are there, the hurries are there, the quarterback hits are there, the run, setting the edge and the run is there, and we know what a problem that was last year. And to me, and when I hear Kyle Van Noy say that the Chargers essentially told him that he wasn't going to be coming back, it leads me to believe, okay, well, they must be lining something else up. Because for the number that he got last year, as well as Kyle ended up playing toward the end of the season, it certainly would make sense for them to say, hey, let us know when you get an offer, and let's see if we can match the number. All things being equal, we know you want to be here. Let's see if we can line it up. And the fact they didn't do that leads me to believe perhaps they're further down the line with an agent for Clark, Houston, Floyd, Ngakoue, one of those, Jadeveon Clowney, and they just view that as an upgrade. That, yeah, we love you, Kyle, but we're working on something that maybe is a little bit better for us. And who knows? They can still go back to Kyle if he can't find a gig and write that check as well.
Yeah, stay tuned with that. You know, Bryce Callahan, another guy who's out there right now,
yeah,
who was a great addition to the secondary last year. A guy we didn't see for a majority of last year, Money, was Rashawn Slater. He spoke. I found him very refreshing, man. I always appreciate when Rashawn goes to the podium because he's very forthright with his answers and very genuine guy. He's 100%. He said he's been 100% for a few months now, which means that he probably had the Chargers beating the Jags probably would have been a good chance he'd be starting against Kansas City in the divisional round.
What a boost that would have been. And I'm sure he was thinking about it when they were up 27-0. Right?
Right?
By the way, you and your forthright, refreshing. Listen, people, Chris is a Northwestern guy. Rashawn is a Northwestern guy. So, of course, they're going to...
I knew you were going to read between the lines.
Of course. They're flaunt each other's big brains and how well-spoken they all are. And, the School of Journalism is one of the finest in the nation. Enough already. Go back to Evanston.
I wanted to ask if you saw this.
Yeah.
Pro Football Focus put their, top 10 tackles together. And, listen, this is Chargers Weekly. I get it. But, objectively speaking, how is Colton Miller ahead of Rashawn Slater?
The Pro Football Focus, I'll start, this is not me trying to couch what I'm about to say. It is an awesome site, great service. And for the most part,
all the time.
I really love what they do. The service they provide, and we have a team access path to what they do on a different level that a lot of the fans maybe don't, but I completely recommend their services. Their premier service. And then they also have something for teams that's just next level, how good it is. The one issue that most people have around football is how they grade, because they don't know necessarily what was called and what the person's assignment was. So you're grading offensive linemen without knowing what their assignment was. Now, are there obvious times when an O lineman gets beat? Sure. But to me, it's just throw on the games and watch Rashawn Slater and watch Colton Miller, and you tell me who you'd rather have. It's not even close. Colton Miller's a really good tackle. He's not Rashawn Slater.
I found it right here.
Okay.
Gordon McGinnis, top 5 AFC offensive tackles. Number 1, Laramie Tunsil. Number 2, Colton Miller. Number 3, Rashawn Slater. Number 4, Ronnie Stanley. Number 5, Orlando Brown Jr. In Gordon's defense, maybe just the lack of snaps last year for Rashawn. Maybe he's not.
And so that, by the way, that's not PFF. That's just this dude. So that's just his.
That's
his. It sounds like that's not PFF. Per PFF grades. It's just this guy, old Gordo there.
Gordo,
what he's got going.
Yeah, half of it has to be money. Maybe just out of sight, out of mind in his second year.
Could be.
Dude was a first-team All-Pro his rookie season. And I guess we're used to seeing what Joey Bosa did to Colton Miller, especially early in his career. Colton Miller's a good player, okay? I'm not saying he's not a good player. But I just have a hard time wrapping my head around Rashawn Slater.
Who's he have number 1, Tunsil?
Tunsil's number 1.
Yeah, and that's fine. I got no problem with that. And I'm just looking through it right now. Teron Armstead's in Miami. Is he not on there?
He's not in the top 5. I think there was another
okay. So I'd have Teron Armstead. I would rather have Teron Armstead than Colton Miller. So that's another one. I'm not a huge Orlando Brown fan. I think if we're so like that's what's funny, right? It's all just subjective. I know Jedrick Wills has struggled a little bit, but I believe. I believe in his potential. So there's that. I mean, would I have him in the top 5? No. He's got a little bit of work to do. But I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is I think if you were to ask football people, hey, sorry, I'm looking off to the side here for people watching it on YouTube. I'm just kind of trying to go through some of these rosters and figure out, Garrett Bowles, no. No, there's not. And that's like that. So that it actually brings us to a bigger point, Chris. We're struggling to find 5. That's why it is so important to invest heavily in the offensive line and why you bring back Pipkins, even though it was a bit of an injury-marred season and it was really his first year of flashing and looking like a legitimate starting tackle. It's why you draft Zion in the first round. It's why you make Corey Linsley the highest-paid center in the league. Offensive line is hard to find. We are struggling. I'm going through all of these teams, and I am trying to find, 5 really good tackles that we can kind of kick around here. And you think about the Super Bowl aspirations of the Bills, and it's like, okay, Deion Dawkins, yeah, He's all right. He's an okay right tackle. Spencer Brown, no, not feeling that one. You go to Kansas City, they just won the Super Bowl, and they signed Donovan Smith as their left tackle. He's like 60, and their right tackle is Jawan Taylor, who essentially Jacksonville didn't even want back, and they have a really gnarly looking offensive line. So it's wild how hard it is to find that position, and this goes to something we talked about before the draft, that I would draft a corner and an O-lineman in the first 5 rounds every single year. Give me maybe even first 4 rounds. Give me O-line, give me corner every year, because you got to throw that, for lack of a better term, you got to throw it against the wall. You've got to find these guys. They are so hard to find. And like when you look at the Kansas City line, right? Trey Smith was a 6th-round pick. Talk about a find, and that's right guard, to be able to find that in the 6th round, like the Chargers did in the 6th round with Jamari Sawyer, to be able to find a starting guard. That's why you got to do that. You just got to keep drafting those guys. It's so important.
Telesco and company have done it too. I mean, we talk about Trey Pipkins, a 3rd-round pick who they stuck with and are seeing the fruits of that. And what was great was Rashawn was just talking about how excited he is to share that left side with Zion this year. You got young guys all over the place. Go ahead.
That's what I was thinking of. How is Ronnie Stanley not on that list?
Stanley was 3 or 4, I thought. I think.
I thought Slater was 3 behind Colton Miller.
4. Ronnie Stanley was 4. Orlando Brown.
Okay,
5.
He was 4th. All right. Well, there you go.
Armstead wasn't on.
My apologies. I was like, where the heck is that guy?
But that's, I think, the exciting part about this upcoming year is that Rashawn is back, right? You get a first-team All-Pro back at left tackle. You have Zion, who had really good moments last year, on the same side as Rashawn. You have the anchor and Corey Linsley leading the charge, the veteran there. You have Sawyer, who Slater praised. He said he had no doubts that he was going to come in and do his job at left tackle, and he could play anywhere. And talk about a find, late-round find for the Chargers. You slide him at right guard, and then Trey, who has been working out with Duke Manyweather and Rashawn, and actually Foster Sorrell going down there, getting a little bit of that Duke magic too, which I think is a good thing. So just the potential for this offensive line money, all these young guys, and perhaps the best center in football leading the way.
It's a good segue into the Kellen Moore post-OTA presser.
Yep.
And of all the things to take away from Kellen, from Rashawn, and from Keenan, I think there were 2 things that really there's 3. There were a lot of things, but the one that really stood out the most, and you can tell there's certain answers. Some of these guys don't really like to do it. I know the coordinators are typically uncomfortable doing it because they don't want to step on the head coach's toes. They're not quite sure what the talking points are sometimes. Don't want to talk out of turn. That's always been a big thing in football. When you're a coordinator, the last thing you want to do is create a story. You just try to play it right down the middle, but every now and then you can see a disposition shift, and you could hear it. When you listen to it, you can hear it in his voice when he talks about the left side of that line and how excited he is. And he talked about, and this was something that Rashawn Slater echoed as well, with why they want to make things simple. We've got our primary runs, and it's important for these 5 guys to be connected, to make their assignments simple, so when we call one of those primary runs, we can let their physical abilities take over. And that's when he leaned into Slater, Johnson, Linsley on that left side, and what he thinks is going to be a great strength in the run game. And it should be, because it was the year prior whenever they ran with Filer and Slater and Linsley. They talking about 5 yards per carry, and they just could not rediscover that last year, understandably so, when Rashawn went out. But it was also fun, and I know you saw this, Chris, just to hear how Rashawn talked about having Zion next to him and what the 2 of them have been doing together in the weight room.
He says he's trying to match Zion. I don't think anybody can match Zion in the weight room. And when Rashawn Slater is having trouble doing it, you know what Zion is in the weight room. He's a beast. I think the most significant quote that came out of, whether it was Keenan, Rashawn, or Kellen Moore, when Rashawn was asked about how Moore can benefit the run game, I'm just going to read it verbatim. He said, simplification. You'd be surprised how much can change in the run game whenever certain rules are rearranged or just coaching points change a little bit. I think that's really going to allow us to just play fast and give us a chance to make explosive plays. And Kellen echoed that. Just when you have elite talent and they're allowed to play fast and not have to think, it also leads me to believe that maybe that wasn't the case last year in the running game. And the way that the things
the
are
production
gonna
would tell you
change
that.
yeah, the numbers say that, right? We don't really need anybody else to tell us. But I think that's exciting for Chargers fans to not only get an all-pro back at left tackle, but also these young guys another year under their belt, and then a coaching philosophy that allows a little bit more simplification for the offensive linemen to just do their thing and have the running game kind of take care of itself after that.
And I would say you talk to any O lineman, and I've been fortunate to work with a few of them, a few really good ones. I mean, some like Nick Hardwick, an all-pro.
Yeah.
And others like Brian Baldinger, who's as great a student of the game as we have in the media around football. And they'll both tell you the same thing, as will any offensive lineman. And that's the Sean O'Hara who I worked with at NFL Network, all those guys. They all say the same thing. Man, we don't want a pass set. We want a freaking run block. We want to run at the defender, and we want to humiliate them. And that's what they really are wired to do. And you can hear that in Slater. Like, yeah, and that's someone, remember, who is in the conversation as the best technique in football. That's what everybody talks about with Slater. His technique is exceptional. His ability to set, reset is unmatched, is one of the best in the league. But you've seen the videos. You see him climbing under all that weight. You're hearing about him talking about Zion, and we've been around Zion. You see how he's built. That's what those guys want to do. They want to impose their will. Because once you do that, well, now you have a defensive line that's a little nervous about getting run over, and maybe they're trying to set themselves so they're not humiliated, on SportsCenter and shown getting pancaked into the ground. And now you've got an advantage in the pass sets. So, look, there's a reason why teams that run the ball really well tend to have the best offensive line grades. Why do you think Dallas and Philly and Cleveland, and you look across their offensive lines, we were talking about the PFF grades. When you look at the PFF grades, teams that run the ball really well because it gives that offensive line an advantage. And so with Kellen Moore coming in, I think the offensive linemen recognize that as well. And that's one thing, just kind of put a button on it, is the one thing that this offensive line has going for it is how strong it is. And I know that's the case for a lot of offensive lines, but like the one thing about Jamari Sawyer, well, why did he slip? Well, they just were worried about his athleticism, but man, once he gets his hands on you, it's over. And like that was the story on Jamari, is they were worried about his length. Or his arms long enough to play tackle? Probably not. Is he athletic enough to move inside? Don't know, but man, if he gets his hands on you, it's over. Yeah. And we saw that last year. There were some guys that were really good at bending that got around him and caused some trouble. But, man, if he put his hands on you and now you got him sandwiched between a 6'6", 320-pound Trey Pipkins, who's pretty damn strong and a bull in his own right, and Lindsley, well, now you talk about someone who can really excel. And I'm not surprised at all to see so much of the conversation focus on A, run blocking, and B, running the ball with the contract incentives that essentially acknowledge that Austin Ekeler is going to be back.
Yeah, and I think everybody's excited about Austin. I go back to a couple of years when Coach Staley first took the job. He made comments about being a physical run team and just how you have to run the ball to set things up. And I do think that they're going to get back to that this year. Just that identity that, hey, we can run the football when we need to run the football. There's going to be certain instances in games where you need to win games, and you need to win it by running. And everybody that talked about Austin, Keenan and Rashawn and Coach Moore said they couldn't be more thrilled that he's going to be back. And I thought one of the things that was a little bit revealing in Keenan's answer is how the offense is going to change. He says, well, Mike can go deep. We got a guy named Quentin Johnston. He can go deep. We're going to go deep this year. So yeah. I think that's what we're going to see. And, fans wanted to see that last year. I think the personnel on the field didn't really allow for that with all the injuries. But make no mistake, I think this is going to be a much more vertical attack. Maybe going back to the rookie year of Justin Herbert, where T. Billy and Jalen Guyton and Mike Williams were catching bombs seemingly on a weekly basis.
Yeah, when Shane was was calling the plays. Just to kind of go back to the point you were making about needing to run the ball, we just have to go back to our most recent football memory, right? The fact that they could not run the ball in the second half when they were up 27-7.
Is it 13 yards? 13 yards?
Yeah. So there it is. What happened? All you do is get a couple more first downs, 2 or 3, maybe 4 first. Can you get me 4 extra first downs? Not even scores, just first downs in the second half with that kind of lead that will get you into better field goal range, that will extend your drive and open up your playbook a little bit more. And they couldn't do it. They were behind the sticks the entire second half, and the game just got away from them. So that's the goal of an offense. It's to stay ahead of the sticks. And that's why running the ball effectively is so important, because it's an easy way to stay ahead of the sticks. If you can get those 4 yards, well, now play action works. Now your eye candy on your jet sweeps and your motion work, because you're worried about a run game that's getting you 4 to 5 yards every time you touch the ball. That's why Shane and Nick and what they did, Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen did in Philadelphia, was so effective. They had defenses on their heels the whole game. And it just felt like last year the opposing defenses were never on their heels. They were on their toes with their ears pinned back, and they were coming because they couldn't run the ball very well. The designed runs seemed like the defense knew what was coming at them, and they never pushed the ball downfield, going to the second point you were making, Chris, about you got the arm, you've got the guys that can make the plays, you've got to go deep. And the reason why Keenan didn't follow that up with, I guess that means that I'm not going to be doing much, because he's going to be the beneficiary of that, because you have to commit resources to explosive plays, and now Keenan's one-on-one in the slot, and we know what he can do to guys with his route running. He's going to be open the whole time. It's going to be one slant after the next for 12 yards and 15 yards and 8 yards and first down here. He's going to lead the league in third down catches for first downs again this coming season, because you're terrified you're going to get burned by that arm and those giant receivers on the outside, or the speed of Jalen Guyton.
Yeah, and maximizing Austin Ekeler's touches too. That's another thing that Kellen Moore talked about, is just, it's not about carries or receptions, just touches, right? If you can maximize Austin's touches with everybody going downfield, just makes the offense just really hard to stop. And, he talked about an 18-game season. When somebody was asking him about the running back 2 position, he's like, listen, you got to have a stable of guys, because it's a long, long season. So, I feel like Isaiah Spiller and Joshua Kelly are going to get a lot of cracks at that running back 2 come training camp. And we talked about all these pass rushers. There's just as many running backs out there right now too, that could potentially be a fit. I mean, Zeke Elliott's another one that Kellen Moore knows really well. I mean, I'm not saying he's coming to LA, but
no, it makes sense, Chris. The one thing that Zeke does as good as any back in the league, even after all those touches and all the pounding that his body's taken, is he's pass pro. That dude pass blocks his ass off. Yeah. And that's, if you're taking shots downfield, and we know Austin does it really well, and Josh Kelly's gotten better at it. We have no idea if Isaiah Spiller can do it, but it would not surprise me that move would not surprise me at all if they said, hey.
A couple of months ago, it was, I think it was Schefter or somebody said that he's narrowed his focus to the Eagles, the Bengals, and then I think another team, potentially, maybe the Jets. And then we heard nothing over the last couple of months. So maybe it's a clean slate now. I don't know. But it's just another guy to keep your eye on. Is Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette, they're both still out there?
Yeah, they're all still out there. And
there you go.
Kareem Hunt, I think, is a little bit – look, we know what he's capable of doing. I mean, he could be a lead back. But again, it goes to what we mentioned a little bit earlier. When all of these players are still out there, they're not getting the number they want. Yeah. And when you don't get the number that you want, you now need to play where can I play so I can get my number next year? Where can I go where I'm going to put up numbers and I can, because the days of Zeke and Kareem Hunt getting $8-10 million multi-year deals, those are gone. It's just the reality. The age they are, the miles, the tread on the tires, they're looking at, I got to, can I maximize this? Okay, I couldn't this year. I didn't get that $5 or $6 million. Well, now I've got to take $2 or $3 million with incentives. Where do I have a chance to earn those incentives and set myself up to at least get this same number next year. And so that's where, the Chargers can come into play on offense. Okay, well, Kellen Moore, both Zeke and Tony Pollard ate. Tony Pollard's getting paid now, and Austin Ekeler, we know, has said publicly, I need a second guy. And this beats me down by the time the end of the season comes around. I need another guy that can match what I'm doing. So that wouldn't surprise me. It's not something you really want to spend money on. You'd like to go the cheaper route with rookie contracts at that. We always talk about spend your money at premium positions: O-line, D-line, corner, wide receiver, quarterback. Those your linebackers, your safeties. Sorry, guys, your linebackers, your safeties, your tight ends. Those your interior linemen to some degree. You can cheat on that. Your linebackers, all that.
How much is Zeke even going to want? He just got the biggest contract there is for a running back. So he's got a pile of money. You hope that maybe some of these guys, their focus is winning a championship and being in the best situation, knowing the offense, and he certainly would check those boxes. Dalvin Cook's another guy that I know the Chargers don't really have the money for, but where's he going to go? Who has the money for a Dalvin Cook? Is this
to me? I feel like they figure that out in Minnesota. I don't know how they don't. It's a team that won 13 games last year, 12 games.
Madison's there, but
Madison Alexander.
It just makes too much sense to have both those guys with the weapons that they have on the outside too. But
when you talk about it as a collective, though. As a collective, corners, running backs, safeties. We talk about John Johnson a million times, right? There are so many players out there that are not going to get played, that aren't going to get paid, that are going to be available on bargain deals. And I'm anxious to see. Again, some of this goes back to waiving Lloyd earlier today when we're recording this on Thursday. It's ooh, who is that? Are we looking at something here? Is there something? Are we working on a little something here that can give this team some depth? Because, man, we saw what happened last year along that defensive line, the interior of the line, the edges when Bosa went down, and searching for that second pass rusher, and how long it took for Kyle Van Noy to finally solidify something opposite Khalil Mack. Corners, just as a safety measure, however long it might take Jackson to get back, all that sort of stuff. There are so many players out there. Boy, it would be great to see some veteran depth added to this group. Again, not talking about guys that are going to get in front of young players that you believe are ready to take that next step. We're talking about depth in case guys that can rotate through, that can give you X number of snaps as your starters rest when everybody's healthy and provide a viable situation if they go down.
We may have taped this before this happened last week, but Nick Williams, another guy, just to add depth to the defensive line. I don't remember if we talked
100%.
about him or not, but
we talked about it. Yeah,
just another example of a guy who I believe in Staley's Mic'd Up, he said that he took Austin Johnson's spot in New York when Austin came to the Chargers. So,
it's perfect. And that's a position where you don't know when's Austin going to be ready, when's Tito going to be ready. What does that look like? So that makes some sense to me. The one thing that's good to see is when you look at I'm looking at the R lads right now, the Chargers depth chart. There's only one green in the starting lineup, and that's Quentin Johnston. Your rookies are providing depth. Man, go ahead and you want to have fun. Click on the Los Angeles Rams, our lads. It is, you want to talk about, there have got to be, I'm not exaggerating, 40 names in green. Green is rookies, by the way. I'm not exaggerating. Here's on offense. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There's 16 on offense. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21 on defense. 37 rookies on that roster. It's incredible how they have had to restock, and what that team's going to look like. If you look at special teams, it's all green.
It's like there's no middle class with the Rams, right? You have the old guys with Donald and Kupp and Stafford, and then all rookies. So I don't know what that's going to look like this year. I'm intrigued by what the Rams are going to try to be this year. Are they going to be a team that's going to compete in the West, or are they going to be a team that's looking for Caleb Williams in 2024?
That's what I would do. I would do the latter. I would absolutely do the latter. I don't think there is any reason to, and it's just hard. It's not, that's the one thing I think people struggle with when they want their team to tank. It's not basketball. It's not baseball. It's a violent game, and guys can get hurt and their careers can end. And that's where you have to be careful. You've got to try to play to win every game, and that's why typically roster construction is when you see the tank. That's how you do it. You're the Arizona Cardinals, and you cut DeAndre Hopkins. It's like, we're going to eat $22 million. Yeah. What's that? Kyler, you're ready to come back? Go ahead, hold out a little bit. Yeah. We're good. Let's leave you off the roster for 2 more weeks. When you look at that roster of Arizona's along that front, defensively,
they're telling you right now what it's going to look like in the desert in the fall.
Yeah.
They're letting you know.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of an aside. My apologies, but
no.
But
hey,
yes.
I want to end on this. It's not Charger related, but it could be AFC related with regard to DeAndre Hopkins. You already said it. He mentioned Justin Herbert. It's not an option. It's not an option for the Chargers.
It's just not necessarily a fit. I mean, look, he fits anywhere. He's that good. But
he fits anywhere. But I think
they've got other needs.
What they don't want is him going to Kansas City or Buffalo. And I saw something today where Kadarius Toney, they have really big plans for him this year. We know that Diggs is in Buffalo. Where do you think DeAndre Hopkins ends up? And like I said, the hope for Charger fans is that you don't see him twice a year in Kansas City or late during the holidays playing for Buffalo.
I think that the issue with DeAndre is he wants money. He wants that Odell Beckham Jr. $15 million.
Which
and I just don't know.
Frankly, if Odell's getting it, I think.
I'm not saying he doesn't, 100%. Yeah. The guy just lost $22 million, or so it's like, or however much he lost in salary by being cut. It's hard to find. I mean, he would fit really well in Miami with those burners, with Waddle and with Waddle and Tyreek Hill just taking the top off, and here you've got a guy who catches everything and anything.
The atmosphere money. It's week 1. It's week 1.
Yeah, I mean that's one. I think it's if they can't figure something out. I don't know if they're really trying to redo Corey Davis's number in New York. You would assume a vet is what, as great as their young receivers are, they've shown that they are just all in to win a Super Bowl this year in New York. I don't know if they could figure that out there. If I were him, man, I'd be looking at the NFC. I'd be like, let's what do you put me with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson? Get me out there, man. Let's do it in Minnesota. How healthy is Michael Thomas? Derek Carr doesn't really like standing in there too long and pushing the ball down the field. Well, here's a guy that's going to catch everything. Throw it in his general vicinity. He'll catch everything. You got Olave out there. Like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And the South is wide open. Carolina traded DJ Moore. You want to make life easier for Bryce Young, your rookie. Give him a receiver that catches everything. Look at what Keenan meant to Justin Herbert his rookie year. Anytime he was under duress, he was looking for 13. Put him on Carolina. I mean, right now you look at their wide receivers. It's Adam Thielen, DJ Shark, and Terrence Marshall. Like, get Hopkins on that team.
What about Detroit? Jameson Williams is out for the first 6 weeks in Detroit.
100%.
Can you imagine Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hopkins, and Williams with Gibbs in the backfield in that offensive line?
Yeah, because you've got the speed in Williams when he gets back out there. I mean, I guess you got Marvin Jones. So you don't have a lot of speed out there. They kind of, Amon-Ra's more of that slot, not necessarily take the top off kind of guy. But, yeah, that's another one. Like, there's plenty of options out there in the NFC that I look at and I see, man, like, how about this? How about freaking Atlanta? Put him in Atlanta with Drake London, and just you're building the tallest basketball team in town. You've got all these big old wide receivers with these giant catch radiuses. Bijan Robinson in the backfield. Kyle Pitts at tight end. You've just got giants.
Algier.
Right, Mac Hollins is out there now to give you a little bit of speed, like Scotty Miller for some speed, in the slot. Like, that one looks good to me. If I were him, I'd be looking.
He doesn't need a franchise quarterback to get it done. He said he's done it with a lot of A lot of pedestrian
100%.
quarterbacks, you know?
The guy catches everything. It is incredible how when the Chargers played Arizona last year, I just remember watching him going, how is he catching these balls?
Yeah.
They're behind him. They're behind his head. They're on his back. There's a corner and a safety draped all over him. And then you just see the guy emerge, and he's got the ball, and he's running. Like, he's incredible. He really is. So there's like that's sort of where I'd be looking if I were him. I would try, like, that would sort of be the path I would be looking at, because you want production. Right? You want to show, I'm still a wide receiver one, and I want $15 million next year. I'll take the $9 million this year, $12 million this year, but I expect to get paid next year, and I'm going to do it by putting up big numbers. So,
you know, if Cleveland wants to elevate itself in the AFC conversation,
it's a great one.
Hopkins, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, and Nick Chubb in the backfield. A little reunion between Watson and Hopkins. That could be something that would be potentially scary in the AFC North too.
100%. Another great one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We're
keep him out of the air. Maybe I'm just trying to manifest here, Chris. Get him to the NFC. Get him out of here. Yeah. Keep him over there. We got too many good players coming into this conference. It's driving me crazy.
Well, it is, and you know, if you're DeAndre Hopkins, and you look at yourself as a game-changing player, you could be the reason why a team competes with Philly to go to the Super Bowl. You know, Philly's the prohibitive favorite. We know that, and they're stacked at the wide receiver position. But if you're a team like the New York Giants or the Detroit Lions or the San Francisco, I mean, I'm just naming teams that are in the conversation. Any team in that NFC South, maybe save for Tampa Bay, I think can win that division next year. You mentioned a couple of them. So if I'm Hopkins, I'm looking at that, saying, okay, maybe I can be the difference maker in the NFC and put our team in the conversation against the Eagles in that NFC Championship, as opposed to having
sign with a
13 of 16
and preferably sign with a sorry, Chris, preferably sign with a team that's also shopping for an edge rusher. So you take up all their money, and the Chargers can take that, can scratch that team off the list.
That's what we're doing here, man. We're trying to put Hopkins in the necessary spot to maximize the Chargers and everything they can do as well.
Exactly.
All right. That's what we do on June 1st, Chargers Weekly Money. A lot of speculation. We're going to get to list season very quickly, too, at the end of June when there's not much going on, and we wait for training camp in July. But at least we have OTAs and a mandatory minicamp coming up to break down.
Yeah, and hopefully some signings. Let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, a week from today, let's see if the Chargers bring on anybody new. We'll break it down here. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly.